Hello and welcome back. Excited to have everyone here for the final episode of 2025. It's been a heck of a year. I'm incredibly grateful. And we're going to wrap this one with an episode that I know you'll be able to carry into the next year. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And the premise is that we train our bodies, we work to sharpen our skills, we work to optimize our schedules, to develop our leadership, our communication. We work to hone all of these different aspects of who we are and how we show up, and many of which we touch on this very podcast. But the truth of the matter is that really almost no one trains their emotions. We don't think about training our emotions, developing our emotional IQ, if you will, in the same way that we think about optimizing and training and maximizing these other areas of our health, these other areas of our life. And I think that with that in mind, I believe that it's maybe not so quietly sabotaging our performance, our leadership, and really our fulfillment in life. And I think the question that we should ask ourselves is that if your emotions had a fitness level, how trained would they be? We train strength, endurance, speed. Again, we train all of these areas of our lives, both the physical as well as career, relationship, and so on. But we really largely ignore training our emotions until they become a problem. So we don't turn our attention to our emotional fitness until we know that it is sabotaging us, until we are sure that it is the root cause of the problem. And so I think one, there's a reframe here that's available, and it is that emotional fitness isn't about being calm all the time. So I'm not advocating that it's some Zen level of control, or that we should always stay calm or not speak up or not be adamant, or even feel certainly the full range of emotions. But what I am advocating is that instead of it being about being calm, I think it ultimately is about capacity. It's about our capacity to process the full range of emotions, to deal with and navigate the full experience of life, the inevitable highs, lows, stress, all of the things that are coming at us. And so I think when we think about our emotional fitness, I think that we are also talking about our capacity to do more. And so I think that boiled down, so many performance problems aren't physical or strategic. I think they're emotional. I think that when we expand our capacity, when we train our emotional fitness, it allows us to show up in these other areas and really fully maximize our potential. And so today we're going to talk about that. I'm going to break that down. I'm going to give you, as always, very strategic and tactical guidance of how you can carry these skill sets into next year, feeling strong, feeling confident, feeling emotionally fit. Because I think that we don't rise to the level of our discipline. I think we fall to the level of our emotional fitness. I think that we put a lot of pressure and we put a lot of emphasis on discipline. And while that is an extremely valuable skill to always hone, I think that our discipline can only rise to the level of our emotional fitness. Because again, if that is diminished, it is dramatically diminishing our capacity. So, with that in mind, the stage is set. You're primed. Hopefully, you can see yourself in at least some of the early versions of what this could sound like. Let's start with just defining what emotional fitness is. Let's break that down and just understand a bit more about what it really equals. And I'd like to define it clearly and I'd like to define it practically Because what I'm also not here to do with this episode, or as we talk about emotional fitness, I don't want this to be something that is that is, too existential. I want it to be something that you can see and hear yourself in, so that you can take action. So, what is emotional fitness? I think ultimately emotional fitness equals the ability to feel, process, and recover from emotions without being controlled by them. So let me say that one more time so you can hear it clearly. What is emotional fitness? For the context that we're talking about, I think that the practical definition of emotional fitness is the ability to feel, process, and recover from emotions without being controlled by them. And there's three components of this definition. One is emotional awareness. So again, the ability to feel your emotions. So with that emotional awareness, is the ability to, or the willingness, I think, to name what you're feeling, and not just react to it. So you can say, this is me angry. This is me sad. This is me frustrated. This is me happy. This is me joyful. This is what this feels like, not just a reaction to it. So the presence of mind to be able to name what you're feeling. Most people live in three different zones. They live in stressed, they're fine, or they're frustrated. And so there's a wide breadth of emotions that are missing from most people's baseline. Again, there's three main areas where most people live. It's stressed, it's fine. So I'm fine, it's okay, I'm neutral, or I'm frustrated. And again, that just leaves out a tremendous breadth of opportunities. Again, if we think about that capacity piece, what else is available to you if you can get outside of these three areas? Because when we have emotional literacy, it expands our choice. It expands the opportunities that we have in front of us. We don't just have to be stressed, fine, or neutral, or frustrated. And I really want you to think about that. That's something that when I was mapping out how I wanted to deliver this podcast, I thought about those three areas, and it really is striking. I mean, if I think about myself, I mean, that is kind of the baseline. You either feel stressed, you're like, if someone asked you, you'd say, I'm stressed right now. You'd say, I'm fine. Or you would be frustrated at the scenario. You'd be frustrated at your surroundings. You'd be frustrated at the people around you. You'd be frustrated at the lack of opportunity. You'd be frustrated at the way things have played out that are misaligned with your expectations. That's a tremendously limited scope to live from. And so again, emotional literacy expands our choices. It expands what we have available to us so that we can access more and increase our capacity. So next, in terms of the three components of emotional fitness, we have emotional regulation. So staying present without suppressing or exploding. So again, I want you to think about what is the traditional baseline? What's your standard operating procedure? Typically, you're either going to suppress your emotion or you're going to explode. It's going to be suppress, and then it's going to come out. Right? What would it look like to regulate? What would it look like to access more emotions so that, again, you have more capacity? You don't just have those two options. Regulation is different than control, or let me reframe that. Regulation is not equal to control. So we talk about regulating our emotions versus controlling emotions. That language matters. Right? Regulation, again, is our access to a full range of emotions so that we have more capacity, so that our emotional fitness is expanded. Control is suppression. So I want you to really think about what regulation would look like. Regulation really is staying with an emotion without letting it hijack your behavior. So I can be frustrated. I can sit in that. I can be stressed. I can be angry. I can be any of the emotions, but that doesn't mean that I have to let it hijack how I behave. I can be that thing and also choose to behave in alignment with how I want to show up. I can choose to behave in alignment with my goals, right? So an emotion is motivation, right? I am motivated or I'm not. So as it relates to our personal health, I can choose, I can recognize that I'm unmotivated, but it doesn't hijack my behavior. It doesn't mean that I don't exercise. I can choose to recognize that I'm frustrated with people that I work with, but it doesn't hijack my behavior. I still show up in a way that's in alignment with my leadership style, my core values, the value and respect that I'm committed to showing them. So I can be this thing, I can have this emotion, but again, regulation is staying with that emotion, being in it, recognizing that you have it, but it doesn't hijack your behavior. Next, we have emotional recovery. Again, the three kind of key aspects of emotional fitness. Emotional recovery, how quickly you return to your baseline after stress. So when you are stressed, is that your narrative for a long time? And the thing that I've noticed about this is that your narrative, or do you have autonomy over that narrative, or are you waiting for some external circumstance or individual or input to change that? Right. So what I mean by that is, are you stressed and then something has to happen to you to be unstressed or to remove that stress? Or do you take autonomy? Do you have control of your regulation in your emotions so that you can return to your baseline quicker? I think all too often we are stressed and we wait for some scenario that we have no control over to return us to our baseline. Right? I'm stressed. I'm going to wait for someone to tell me some good news so that I can be unstressed. I think that is a really challenging way to move through the world when we don't have autonomy, or we tell ourselves that we don't have autonomy over our ability to return ourselves to baseline. So I want you to think about how you can have autonomy over that. Next, as it relates to emotional recovery, we let our lingering emotions drain our capacity even when the stressor is gone. So you sit with that emotion even when the thing has solved itself. Again, I think this is another one that we live with so much. The stress happens, and then that becomes our narrative for a long time after that. Right? Move on. Access another emotion. You don't have to continue to be that thing. Someone cuts you off in traffic in the morning and you're still mad about it in the afternoon, or you let it impact you. A hiccup happens at work, something doesn't go as expected, your boss yells at you, an employee doesn't deliver in alignment with your expectations. When that thing is over with, move on. It doesn't have to change your narrative. It doesn't have to change your emotional recovery. All right. So that is generally high level what emotional fitness looks like. Now let's talk about how low emotional fitness shows up. So when we don't have it, what does that look like in real life? Right now, I want this to be very relatable. I want you to hear yourself in this. I know I say this a lot on this podcast, but I want you to listen closely, take notes if it's relevant. And I want you to work to find yourself in this. Again, this is what low emotional fitness looks like deployed, exhibited in the world. First, reactivity. I think this one's first and foremost. This is people's baseline. This is where we go when we don't have access to the full range of emotions, when we're not able to work or we haven't developed our emotional recovery, when we're not able to return to that baseline quickly. We are reactive, right? We snap at people, we're overly defensive. Our emotional responses are bigger than the situation. So we have an outsized response to the situation, right? How many of us have been in that situation? The thing happens, maybe it's frustrating, but your response is outsized to the actual impact that the thing had. That's because we don't have emotional fitness, right? That would be like not having a baseline of physical fitness and going for a walk, and that walk feeling like you were climbing Mount Everest. So again, your body's response is outsized based on the input or in relation to the input. Next, we have avoidance. So again, we're talking about what low emotional fitness looks like deployed. So we avoid, we procrastinate meaningful work. We overwork to avoid uncomfortable feelings. We numb behaviors, so scrolling, busyness, distraction. So we're avoidant. And we're avoidant because we know that the things that we need to do are going to put us in positions that are going to be uncomfortable, or they're going to put us in relation to emotions that we might not want to access. But again, that's limiting. I want to tie this. I want you to always come back to capacity. What would happen if you didn't have to exhibit that behavior, if you're able to lean into the work that needs to be done? Next, we have inconsistent performance. So good days and bad days feel random. Some days are good, some days are bad. Really no seemingly any science, rhyme, or reason behind it. And then your output is tied to your mood and not your values. So today I feel like I can really show up. Tomorrow, maybe not so much, versus values, right? Versus being rooted and grounded in the things that really matter to you. You let your mood sway you. Next, we have emotional carryover. So one bad conversation ruins the whole day. This is what I was talking about earlier. How many people does this happen to? I talk to so many people all the time that just let this thing ruin an otherwise fine day. And they are unable to find high points in the day because of something negative or misaligned with their expectations that happened earlier in the day. And next is that stress bleeds into your personal health, into your exercise, it bleeds into your work, it bleeds into your relationships, it carries over into all of these other things. So you're unable to separate the stress in one environment from the opportunity in another environment. You had a stressful day at work. Well, it doesn't mean that you're stressed at home, right? You had one instance at work. It doesn't mean that your workout for that day can't be great. Again, there's this emotional regulation. There has to be, or there's an opportunity to have autonomy in this. Next, we have quiet burnout. So it's not explosive. It's just flat. You're detached. You're disconnected. And, this is just that kind of, I think, general apathy that starts to happen when our only places that we can go are stressed, fine, or frustrated. If those are the only three places that you get to live, that's a pretty dark place. And it would make total sense if that feels like the only three places you have access to. It would make total sense that you wouldn't feel particularly excited. And so it would just be this kind of flatline, quiet, slow burnout where it's just flat. You're detached. It's disconnected. Doesn't matter. I'm just going through the motions. Today's another day. Let me get through it. Let me punch the clock. I'm just trying to get through this week or this day or this month. It's just this kind of quiet, slow fizzle that doesn't really amount to anything that feels particularly exciting because, again, there's limitations. You don't have access. You're not allowing yourself access to this full range. And so I think there is this sentiment or where this kind of left me thinking is that if we don't train our emotions, they will ultimately train us. And usually that happens at the worst possible moment. It puts us in a reactive state. We pull from a limited bank of emotions or feelings based on a situation that we were already reactive in. And then the other side of that is something that is not going to look good. It's not going to feel good. And it's going to have an outsized response and show up in an outsized way in our life. So with that in mind, there is this narrative is going to connect. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen to everyone, or that everyone doesn't have a propensity to struggle with this. But specific to our audience here at Endurance Minded, and specific to how we think about high performance through these different lenses of life, I do want to talk specifically about why high performers struggle with emotional fitness, because I do think that it can be harder to access for high performers, for people that are really pushing themselves. The stakes are high. They are extremely hard on themselves. Their internal dialogue and narrative is already one that is skewed for self-sabotage. And so I want to dig in for those of you that might consider yourself high performers, to why this is such a struggle, because I do get it. And as always, so much of what we talk about in Endurance Minded comes from my own journey and my own path to trying to rectify high performance with all of these other areas and responsibilities and places in life that I do want to thrive. And so why do high performers struggle with emotional fitness? Well, firstly, emotional suppression is rewarded. And when we're in environments where high performers typically are located, what we see is emotional suppression is rewarded through the narratives and the language that we use. So things like, stay tough, just push through. I don't make it a big deal. Right? The language like that goes on and on. Hey, I'm really having a hard time. Yeah, I hear you. Stay tough. You'll get through it. Okay. So there's no other opportunity. I'll just push through. Right. Yeah, this is really challenging. Yeah, fair enough. Just push through it. You'll be on the other side of it eventually. Light at the end of the tunnel, so on and so forth. This is a challenging time period. Yeah, ultimately, like, just don't make it a big deal. It's fine. It'll blow over. Again, right? These are just a few of the many, many varied examples of what emotional suppression is kind of baked into the narrative of high performance, which is that we shut that down and just push forward. And again, this is really an inflection point, because there is an inherent disconnect between the narrative in high performing spaces and what is expected of those individuals. Well, what is expected is incredible work, is greatness, is execution at all cost. Well, that narrative, again, limits our capacity. When we don't have access to a full range of emotional fitness, we don't have the ability to do our best work. Again, all we have access to in that emotionally unfit space is that we can be stressed, we can be fine, or we can be frustrated. You tell me if anyone does great work and does their best work with access to those three things. No. Right? So best case, you're fine. Well, who wants fine work? No, we want great work. We want great outcome. We want great communicators, great leaders, great vision. So again, emotional suppression, and it is rewarded, but that narrative really flies in the face of what we say that we want. Next, why is emotional fitness so hard for high performers? Next, we confuse emotional control with strength. So we tell ourselves that our ability to control our emotions is actually our strength. But we have to understand that suppression is not equal to regulation. Right? I talked earlier about how regulation is not equal to control. Regulation is the ability to feel that thing, to know that emotion is available, but not let it impact your output. Right? Not let it hijack what you actually do. Well, now we're going to recognize that suppression and regulation are not the same. what we're told is that regulating our emotions is pushing them down, right? Just push through. Suppression is not equal to regulation. Suppression is shutting that thing down. Again, it's limiting our capacity. Regulation is knowing that we have that emotion available, leaning into it, finding a narrative, finding language that allows us to express that, but also not letting it hijack who we are, how we show up, the actions that we take in alignment with our values. And we have to know that suppressed emotions ultimately leak out sideways. And what that means is they impact the people around us. So we're not getting away with it. We think that we're hiding it from everyone. It's not true. No one is that good at hiding it. Suppressed emotions leak out sideways, and it will impact the people in your circle. Next is high performers, at the end of the day, are used to powering through. It is part of the proverbial job. And there's where this becomes an issue is that we can power through, but it really only works for tasks. If you have a long to-do list of task-oriented jobs, then you can power through. You can check things off the list, low-hanging fruit, easy tasks, things that are really you operating below your full potential. But if you have vision-oriented work to do, if you need to rally people around a shared cause, if you need to show up for the key relationships in your life, if you need to communicate in a way that allows people to connect with you and see who you are and build people around shared values, if you need to really be present and be connected to the people that you care about, this is not going to work. You're not going to be able to power through the things that really matter. You can power through tasks, but when it comes down to you being a high performer that's committed to your full potential, it will cause you to fall short, because you will not be able to power through the things that really matter. It will limit you. And ultimately it's going to backfire, right? We're going to push, and it might work for a while, but it will stack and it'll backfire. And then the last reason that high performers really struggle with emotional fitness is that no one's modeled the skill. It's not part of the environment. And I'm the first to recognize that. And I certainly have been in and around environments where this narrative that I've painted for you is pervasive. But with that in mind, we have to recognize, and I think it's worth admitting, that no one's modeled the skill. Most leaders were never taught emotional processing. We were never taught that it was important to be anything other than stressed, fine, or frustrated. And so we move on. There's no language to pull from. There's no other access. There's no bank of knowledge that gives us anything else to the contrary. And I do want to name that. I think that's a narrative that is shifting. I think a lot of people are recognizing that to truly reach their full potential, you have to access the full breadth. Emotional health has to be one of those things, physical health, mental, so on. But because no one's modeled that skill, high performers will default to avoidance or over intellectualizing. So we'll tell ourselves that we're smarter than the need to develop this skill, and that makes us feel good about ourselves for a little while, because we think that we can outthink the problem, the opportunity to develop our emotional fitness, and that gets modeled on repeat. So I think there is an opportunity, and for anyone listening, if you haven't had that modeled to you, you can be the model. And that's how I've thought about shifting my emotional fitness. Is just because I didn't have access to it doesn't mean that I can't be the access point for others. And I think that if we have the ability and the access to that knowledge, I think that it is our inherent responsibility to model that for others, even if it wasn't modeled for ourselves. So now let's talk about what it looks like to systematize this. And I want to be very clear, this is not therapy. This is a trainable system. This is something that is a framework for how you can do this in a way that moves the needle in your life as a high performer. Because I know a lot of you are going to be like, I don't need this. This doesn't resonate with me. I can't do this. This isn't in my wheelhouse. This isn't. You're wrong. And yes, you can. Right? Listen up. I'm going to give you a framework. I built this to be something that actually works for people in high performance environments. It's called the REPS framework, REPS, right? What does R stand for? It stands for recognize. So this is the framework you're going to use to start to develop your emotional fitness, to start to train your emotional fitness so that you can be more than just stressed, fine, or frustrated. And I think if you're honest with yourself, if we're all honest with ourselves, we would like to be something other than those three things. It sure would feel nice. So let's get there. Here it is. REPS, framework. First one, R, recognize. Name the emotion. Again, first thing is just to say there's more things that I have access to. So I'm going to name the emotion and just practice. I'm feeling blank because of blank. I'm feeling happy because I had an incredible conversation with my partner this morning. I'm feeling let down because this person that I work with that I thought had my back didn't really show up for me the way that I thought. Right? Name the emotion, and this awareness just starts to create space. It's a muscle that can be worked. When you recognize the emotion, you name it, you give it a narrative, it starts to become something that you can deploy. It starts to become something that you can put into use other than these limited range of emotions that we typically have. Next, the E in the REPS framework, experience. Don't escape, right? The E is experience. I want you to sit with that emotion for 60 to 90 seconds. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to analyze it. And just let your nervous system process that. Sit with it for a second. The key difference here is that typically we react. I feel this way, boom. Just take a beat. Just pause. 60 to 90 seconds. Right? Don't fix it. Don't analyze it. It doesn't have to mean anything about you. You can just sit with this thing. All right? That's your experience. P, process. Okay? So now we're going to take some action. Process. I want you to ask yourself, what triggered this? What story am I telling? And what do I actually need right now? So great way to do this is just notes on your phone, right? You can dictate into your notes apps now. It's an incredibly useful way to keep track of and document how you're processing and how you're building your emotional fitness, right? This is a quantitative application of building emotional fitness, just like you wear your wearables for your sleep and your HRV and your run training and all your things. This is the equivalent of the wearable. It's a quantitative metric. I'm doing this thing. I can look back and see, again, you're going to ask yourself, what triggered this? What story am I telling? And what do I actually need right now? What that's going to do is it's going to keep you from being in a reactive place. It's going to allow you to be proactive, access a wider range of emotions. Again, build that emotional fitness. Next, the S in the REPS framework, settle. So take a beat. Take 5 deep breaths. Do a little movement, right? Take a couple laps. Do some air squats. Do a couple push-ups. Go for a 2-minute walk. Go get some water. Go outside, right? Take a bit of fresh air. Doesn't have to be big. Small things. Bring yourself back to your baseline intentionally. Again, this is one of the key pieces. How quickly do you get back to your baseline? We could think about it like your resting heart rate. Again, we're going to think about our emotional fitness in the same way that we think about our physical fitness. I'm going to go for a run. How quickly does my heart rate return to a baseline? What's my recovery? That's a fantastic indicator of aerobic fitness. I do this effort, my heart rate declines quickly. Same thing, emotional fitness. How quickly can you come back to baseline? One of the ways to do that is just to take a beat, settle in, take a minute or two. This thing happened. I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to process. I'm going to work to bring myself back to baseline more quickly. So again, emotions need reps. Think about it like any other exercise. So again, real quickly, reps framework. This is something you can deploy. This is the quantitative application of emotional fitness. First, you're going to recognize, name the emotion, practice just understanding what it is. Then you're going to experience it. You're not going to run from it. You're going to sit with it for a second, 60 to 90 seconds again. Then you're going to process. This is where you use the Notes app, dictate into your phone, ask yourself what triggered this? What am I feeling? What story am I actually telling? What do I need right now? And then you're going to settle. Take a breath, do a little bit of movement, take a quick walk, step outside. The goal here is to return yourself to baseline as quickly as possible. All right. That's what you can do to change your emotional fitness. I just gave you your training plan. Now, I'm going to give you your next week of training. All right. I'm talking about this intentionally in the same way that we would talk about physical fitness. I'm going to give you your emotional fitness deliverables. This is your next week of training. This is your concrete practices you can do this week. You can do a daily emotional check-in. You can ask yourself, what am I feeling? Where do I feel it? And what do I need? The other way to frame that third question is, what does it need? What does the emotion need? Does it need a conversation? Does it need to take a beat? Does it need a breath? What does it need? Right? So a daily emotional check-in. Next, the 90-second rule. So when you are triggered, pause for 90 seconds before responding. A minute and a half. That's all I'm asking. 90 seconds. When you feel stressed or frustrated, because again, those are going to be your two baselines. As you work to build your emotional fitness, you're not going to have access to more than that. That's what you have right now for most of us. Stressed, fine, frustrated. So when you feel stressed or frustrated, pause for 90 seconds. Most emotional spikes will resolve in that window. So again, bring yourself back to baseline. That's going to be the marker of our emotional fitness development. How quickly can you get yourself back to baseline? Next, we're going to do an emotional cool down, just like we would with our physical exercise. End your day with a little bit of just clearing. You can take a walk. You can sit back in your chair. You can take a couple deep breaths. You could journal. You could dictate, Notes app, whatever works for you. Just take a second to process. I felt really frustrated today when X, Y, and Z happened. On the other side of that, I was able to bring myself back to baseline. I felt happy when X, Y, and Z happened. Just recognize when these things are happening. Again, each one of these is a rep that you're performing that's going to build your emotional fitness. Next, we're going to cap it at the end of the week. So these are some daily actions you can take. Those are going to stack at the end of the week. We're going to look at our emotional load, just like we would look at our training load. You're going to ask yourself, what drained me emotionally? Then you're going to ask yourself, what restored me emotionally? And then we're going to take some action. The question you're going to ask yourself is, with that in mind, what do I need to change next week? Right? What are the actions? I need to be in more positive conversations. I need to be less reactive. I need to recognize the high points in my day. I need to not let these stressors linger for the entire day. I need to not let these reactive scenarios impact how I show up in other spots, whatever it is, right? Be honest with yourself. What do I need to change next week to be more emotionally fit? Emotional recovery is not just about how you feel in the moment, right? Emotional recovery is just as important as physical recovery. And truthfully, most people ignore both. So imagine what would happen if we just took a beat. If we thought about our emotional recovery, if we also use that to enhance our physical recovery, I think that there is absolutely a world where these things go hand in hand, where when we take a couple breaths or we take a walk or we take a pause, that also changes our physical state. And I think that there is a tremendous opportunity to think about what our emotional recovery can do for a stacked week over week. You're going to feel better. It is going to impact you physically. It's going to impact your relationships, not only with yourself, but with others. So, lastly, I'm going to tie this into impact. I want you to really see and hear why this matters. So I'm going to talk about emotional fitness as a leadership skill and as a life skill, because if there's one thing that high performers need to be, is you need to be a good leader and you need to be good in life. You are setting an example for a lot of people around you. And so I want you to understand, I want you to really hear why emotional fitness is a skill, not only for leadership, but for life, so that you can be the best version of yourself. When we're better leaders, you're less reactive and you're going to build more trust. Trust is the currency that you are working in if you're in a leadership role. And so the thing that you need to be most focused on is building trust. How do you build more trust? You can be more emotionally fit. You can come across as more well-rounded, more stable, less reactive. You can communicate from a place of empathy and values versus reactivity. People trust people they can count on. People trust people that don't just show up stressed or frustrated. So if you want to be a better leader, you're going to be less reactive and you're going to build more trust. That's going to come through emotional fitness. Then you're going to have better performance physically, right? You're going to have fewer emotional crashes. You're going to have fewer swings wildly in one direction or the next. You're going to show up more consistently. You're going to feel better during your exercise. You're going to be more present. The mind-body connection is extremely important with exercise. So if we are more emotionally regulated, if we're more emotionally fit, we get more out of our exercise because we're more connected to how we feel and what's going on. Right? Don't just go through the motions in your exercise. Get the most out of it. Maximize your time and input. Best way to do that is to work on your emotional fitness. Next, you're going to have better relationships. If you're more present, if you're more patient, if you're more connected, everyone on the other side of a relationship with you is going to feel better. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to make the individuals in those relationships feel better. Those are the three things that will always impact a relationship for the better. Is if you can be more present, you can be more patient, and you can be more connected. The only way to do that is to develop your emotional fitness. Lastly, you have better endurance. Endurance for life. Endurance for the inevitable long road in front of you, in front of all of us, because emotions don't hijack your momentum anymore. You're not derailed by all of these twists and turns, the highs, the lows, the inputs. Again, you have autonomy. You have access to a full range. You can sit with that, but it doesn't hijack your momentum. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't change your personal internal dialogue as well as your narrative about the world and the people in it. You just get to move through because you're regulated. Your emotional fitness is high. And so your endurance and your ability to move consistently through the world changes for the better dramatically because, again, your emotions don't hijack your momentum. And so your emotional fitness sets the ceiling for your performance. You will only rise to the level of your emotional fitness because it impacts every single area of our lives. And so I want to leave you with just a few reflection questions, a couple of things that you can take action on right now. I want you to think about where your emotions derail you the most. Just ask yourself, where do my emotions derail me most? And that's where you can direct your attention. That's where you can start to build your emotional fitness. Then I want you to ask yourself, which emotion do I avoid feeling? There's always a few that are easily accessible, and there's lots that we try to push aside. That's another area you can lean into. You can use the reps framework that I outlined to lean into those ones that you're avoiding so that you can access them more. Again, that's going to stack. Those are like training days. That's going to build your emotional fitness. Lastly, what would change if I trained my emotions like I trained my body? If I treated emotional fitness like I treat physical fitness? If it held the same weight? If I recognized that the inputs in my emotional fitness are equally or more important than my inputs on my physical fitness, because truly that's my ceiling. Again, I'm only rising to the level of my emotional fitness because it is impacting every area of my life. It's impacting my ability to be present in my workouts, present in my work, present in my relationship, confident, patient, connected. All of these things matter. Nothing happens in a silo. I promise you, everything impacts everything else. And so I want you to practice one proverbial emotional rep per day and let us know what you think. What happened? What happened when you leaned into the emotion that you admitted that you're avoiding? Or you were clear on what's derailing you by not of developing your emotional fitness. And so I think as we head into the new year, this one feels so relevant because there's so much opportunity. It's a natural demarcation point. It's a natural benchmark. Our bodies, of course, don't know what a new year is, but our minds certainly do. And as things change and our workflows adapt and we think about goal setting, I think what I would like to leave you with as we move into, as we close out this year and move into the next one is a bigger toolbox, a more developed toolbox, a more nuanced toolbox, one that gives you some access to some emotional fitness tools so that you can fully reach your full potential. And I hope that that's what you're able to do as a result of this conversation today. I also want you to know that you don't need to be tougher. I think you need to be more emotionally fit. You're plenty tough. If you're someone who's showing up for yourself, showing up for your work, showing up for your family, your friends, if you're doing the things that are required of most individuals in life, you are tough. It takes a tremendous effort. So I don't think you need to be tougher. I think you need to be more emotionally fit to raise your ceiling so that you are able to show up in those areas and feel excited, feel fulfilled, feel clear, feel present, feel connected, all the things that we talk about. So thank you so much for an incredible year. We're teed up for an even better 2026, and I can't wait to continue to pour into our community at Endurance Minded. As always, you can find us at enduranceminded.com. Let us know what's going on, what you're thinking, how we can support you. You can rate this podcast on your favorite platform. Wherever you're listening right now, take a second, rate us. It would mean the world to me. You can also subscribe. New episodes every other week. We drop new episodes Tuesday morning, and we're going to keep that going just like we have for several years. And that way you're alerted of fresh new episodes and can stay up to date. And then lastly, share it with a friend. Anybody that you think could benefit, somebody in your community, somebody that you think would get value. I invite you to share this episode or your favorite with someone and invite them into the Endurance Minded community. It would mean the world to me. So rate, subscribe, share. I hope you have a safe start to your 2026. I hope it's everything that you want it to be. I hope you get time to be present, connected. I hope you get in some physical activity and whatever that looks and feels like for you. And can't wait to see you in the new year. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time on Endurance Minded.